Hi, today I want to talk about the evolution of waterfall, agile, and the many hybrid components of agile. If you've been in IT for some time, you've heard of waterfall, at least you've heard the rumors about waterfall. Waterfall has four distinct buckets or work streams, starting with requirements elicitation, then design, development, and testing. And waterfall, each was distinct, and oftentimes you had to have sign-off before you could even move to the next step. The goal was to define all of the requirements for the solution in advance and lock them down. This, for some, gave them a sense of stability, but many people will attest it only locked down and committed people to building the wrong things. And the unfortunate part is by the time the design was completed and signed off, then the development started and development was completed, and eventually testing started. That sometimes is the first time the product owner or business or end users saw the solution. This could be months and even years from the time they made the initial request until they actually saw the product. And maybe you can already guess the reaction was, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I expected. So there was a lot of churning back and forth, and even projects canceled after years of going through the waterfall process and having nothing of value to show for it. So then came Agile. One of the flavors of Agile is Scrum. Now, the goal of Agile is that the conversation that occurs between development, tests, and design, notice the overlap here. It's all about an Agile team, people having conversations, and working directly with your product owners to come up with the right solution. There's very small increments, such as anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. Throughout those increments, the product owner is engaged, and at the end of those sprints or iteration, the product owner gets a demo of the progress for that 2 weeks. And every 2 weeks, the product owner gets to weigh in and say whether we're going in the right direction. Now, one of the things that is also different about Scrum is that your requirements aren't all identified up front or locked down, but placeholders known as user stories. Every sprint or iteration, which is every 2 or 4 weeks, you can reprioritize what's most important. So the business or the product owner is getting a demo every 2 weeks of their progress so far. They get to weigh in and then prioritize what's the next most important items that they want to see in the next sprint. So they're completely engaged, and at any step can say whether we're going in the right direction or not. The other important goal for each sprint is that you're delivering something of value. These aren't just random components that you're demoing, but something that is potentially shippable. So oftentimes, if funding or priorities shift in the organization and a project gets ended prematurely and Agile, the goal is still to have usable product for the sprints that you were able to complete. Now this is pure Agile and Scrum. Going from waterfall to Agile, as you can imagine, can be very extreme and jarring to an organization. It could take years even to make that transformation. So in the meantime, some organizations try to find a middle ground. Sometimes this is to the detriment of what the real values are behind Agile. There's one trend that I see throughout my travels and conversations, and some people have labeled it Wagile, combining waterfall and Agile, or Scrumfall, again, a combination of Scrum and waterfall. One of the things to be careful of when using hybrids although there's a lot of flexibility in how you approach Agile. One of the dangerous approaches that I see is when people take and use the Scrum approach where there's overlap and conversations around the design, development, and test. However, they still try to treat the requirements in a waterfall way, where they're all defined up front, locked down, and even signed off. You lose all of the flexibility and input and interaction with your product owner whenever you do this. History has shown us is that when the requirements and they're signed off and they're locked down, is that the team gets committed to building according to the specifications and not according to the conversations with the actual person who is your stakeholder, your product owner. It becomes a back and forth and a finger pointing to the signature versus really listening to the product owner and based on their knowledge and learning as the system is being created. Agile is all about learning fast. So if you do 2 sprints and what you identified initially isn't true, or maybe there's some assumptions that don't hold up once you start building the solution, then you pivot. That's what makes it Agile. So, I hope this was a helpful reference and maybe can be a conversation starter with your team and with your organization about your approach to Agile. I'm Jacqueline Sanders Blackman of B2T Training and co-owner